Jeff, on to you.
Yeah, well, Marcus kind of stole my answer. The first game,
RPG guys.
I loved Pac-Man and all the, growing up. But the first game that like captured my imagination and made me compulsively want to get on my dad's PC over and over was Bard's Tale. And ever since then, I have had a love affair with role-playing games. My favorite game of all time is Ultima 7. But I think the most exciting genre of the moment, and it kind of is a combination of both your answers, is MOBAs, just sort of tower offense. And I think that is really where a lot of the excitement is. I know there's a lot of copycats coming out, but it's sort of reminds me where fighting games were, in the early years of fighting games, when Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and then this excitement and all the tournaments that were happening. And I think there's such a wonderful community growing in MOBAs, and the idea of televised competitive MOBA playing and bringing gaming mainstream and making it like a sporting event. I think that's super thrilling, and it's fun to watch. Those games are fun to play, and it's a very new genre that I think has a lot of potential.
No, it's fascinating to see, like when in high school, I remember playing tons of RTS games with my friends, stuff like that, and to see how that has now transitioned into this phenomenon of people playing these MOBAs online is.
And it's an interesting moment, again, culturally, because we've had online gaming tournaments. We've had it with first-person shooters. We had it with RTS. We've had other genres that tried to launch leagues, tried to have gaming superstars and all this kind of stuff. I can't tell you the number of crazy pitches that we had at CAA about exactly this, but I think we might be in the first moment or right before the first moment in history where it's socially acceptable enough.
Oh yeah.
And games are mainstream enough, and the audience who might be interested in watching these tournaments can have it on their device in front of them and play it and have some skill enough, in the same way that anyone can throw a football and watch a football game, that you might see it start to work.
And you see these bars popping up where people are going and having a beer and watching a video game being played by professionals. I mean, I think that's proof of what you're saying about it.
That's
being
cultural
mainstream.
victory, man. That's
Exactly.
cultural victory right there.
I mean, that's South Korea. I mean, the StarCraft 2 tournaments, I mean, they are televised nationally. They take over cinemas and run them in cinemas. I mean, that is going to be an interesting way forward. Jeff, what's your favorite? Because nobody ever asks you the question back. I'm going to ask you the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of I would say, not RPG in the traditional sense. I like more of sort of the action RPG, I guess. I come out of a background of, I grew up loving adventure games, right? Like Tim's old stuff, things like that, the old Sierra adventures. And I feel like, to me, honestly, the games I love are the ones that blend a little bit of RPG-ness, but not the epicness sometimes of Skyrim. To me, I love, but it's almost too much for me in a way. And I like sometimes a little bit more of a structured story to my games. So I like third-person action games. Sometimes open world games I love. Probably one of my favorite games the past few years has been Red Dead Redemption, just in terms of what that did. And that's sort of like Skyrim, but a little bit more focused than Skyrim. So I'd say probably third-person action adventure.
Could you imagine if they took Red Dead and made it more RPG-esque to a degree, where you create your character, and almost that did this mashup of Skyrim and Red Dead? How intense would that be? I mean, it might be a bit too much for you, but I think
I think that's the goal. It's just a question of, can you get the fidelity there, where it's you get an experience, and a narrative experience is great, because Skyrim is great, but the talking heads and the voices, it's not as great as the narrative in Red Dead.
Yeah, just the game producer in me is now scheduling this out, and anybody who has an extra 110 million bucks,
exactly,
we'll call up Todd and Christian Conamesa, and they'll make that game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe 120 million.
And it was my idea.
Get on it.
And that's the challenge, I think. It's I love, great stories, great, 3-act narratives, but then, balancing that with sort of the...
Well, it's balancing, and it's the combinatorics of all the storylines. I mean, if you can, if as Warren Spector says, play style matters, that means that you're dragging behind the player, a whole bunch of data about who you are and how you how you behave. It's like, in the Bethesda games, if you're an elf and you walk up to somebody, they say, hey, hold elf. That moment is expensive to produce. The voice actor has to record it. It has to sound like all the other races. And and again, I don't want to sound like the pedantic jerk, but which I am. But the cost of that is really high. And
but there's obviously profit in it, because Bethesda do it so well. I mean, they've done it. They did it with Skyrim. They did it with Fallout.
It's been years of training that skill up. And the same thing is true. I mean, the story of Red Dead Redemption was really a story of redemption in taking teams and processes that had been perfected at Rockstar and elements of those teams and bringing them together to make that work. And it's just years and years and years of experience. It's like Double Fine with the Kickstarter for adventure games. Those guys are the guys who I think could be credible, sort of getting together and mashing it up, and also could be credible to fund. And and it's interesting ideas like that. If those sorts of things start to happen, those kinds of people come together to create the new genres, I think that everyone would have enough trust in them to fund that to happen. And maybe you could get your $100 million. Maybe you could do that.
$100 million on Kickstarter.
Go for it, Jeff. Start the page. Start the page.
Let's do it.
Donate buttons.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the bonus round. Thanks to Seamus, Marcus, and Jeff for joining us here at the I Am 8-Bit Gallery. We'll see you guys next Sunday right here on GT at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern for the next episode of Bonus Round.
See this and other GT shows and game reviews on the GT Originals iOS app, available now on the App Store.